Welcome to the Higher Ed Geek Podcast, where each week we explore the impact of EdTech on the student experience with engaging, fun, and relevant conversations that honor the wide range of work happening all across the higher ed ecosystem. I'm your host, Dustin Ramsdell. I've been working in and around higher ed for the past decade focused on student support and digital experiences. Join me every week for discussions with some of the best minds in education technology. The Higher Ed Geek Podcast is a part of the Enrollify podcast network, a robust collection of shows designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Welcome, everyone, to another super special live episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast here at the AI Show, the ASU GSV Summit in sunny San Diego. I've had a wonderful time here at the event, and we're wrapping it up with this conversation that I'm really intrigued about, kind of when it was presented to me of an AI-driven textbook. It was just like, tell me more. All right, I'm intrigued. So we are going to be exploring that and starting out as we always do. If you both want to briefly introduce yourselves and what brought you to the event.
My name is Rinka Stahuljak. I am professor of comparative literature at UCLA, and also I direct the UCLA Center for Early Global Studies.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Landers. I am a PhD candidate in history at UCLA, and I also come from a background in tech. So both of us actually were here because we were nominated and invited, and were just blown away by all of these fascinating projects in education with AI.
And just to add, we were nominated as AI Innovators, and this is thanks to the UCLA First in the Humanities AI-assisted classroom experience and AI compiled textbook that we developed together.
Yeah, and going to give a shout out and credit where it's due, so I appreciate that. We want to explore that AI-driven textbook. So just to kind of start big picture, tell me more about the development of this. Like, how did this project start, and kind of what are, I guess, kind of the main aspects of how you describe it?
So just a little bit of a reframe. It is not an AI-driven textbook. It is a human-driven textbook.
Oh, yes.
Now, it is AI compiled, and it does have a number of AI tools integrated in it, which made it possible for us to have this AI-assisted classroom that we're going to talk about more in detail. But let me just expand a little bit on this idea of human-driven and human-centered. Everything that we did, the common misconception about what this AI textbook was that we just asked ChatGPT
write me a book.
And just give us the textbook on this topic. That is not how it happened. We used my materials from over 10 years of teaching, developed notes, all the transcripts from my classrooms, the PowerPoints, all of this went into, and this is obviously research from decades that basically I processed to create this class, so we input that in it. So this is already human-powered in that way. Then we went through the generation of content that is human-guided and that is human-edited. And it's really about, ultimately, and we can talk about this more, about creating more human-to-human time. And we can talk about it after we explain what the textbook looks like. But this is one of the most exciting aspects of what AI-assisted for human-to-human contact really can do.
Yeah, and just to back up for a second, not to back up, but so I began working with Kudu at around a project that Stefania Tutino, a professor in history, had a vision for a large undergraduate history course where the students were asked to pay $150 for a textbook and only 1/3 of it served them. And that's how we started thinking about AI not in a defensive mode of dealing with students who have used AI to submit essays, but rather how can we engage with AI to help us create a textbook that is completely customized to the faculty's way of teaching the class. And so following that first test case, if you will, with over 100 students, we began refining the process, which culminated in Professor Stahuljak's extraordinary class and textbook.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I guess just that like the genesis of it, like part of it being like, there's been a lot of movement around like open educational resources. So the idea of like if you could just create textbooks, more easily, more frequently, they're up to date, and certainly informed by the input of humans, the guidance of humans, all these sort of things. Like you're, I think, solving for a lot of the kind of stubborn problems around like, what are these sort of learning assets that, are the companions to courses all across the country and, every institution and everything. Like, so it is like a really intriguing thing. So I think, that even just like the very practical, like, the price of developing and selling books and all that is like one of those benefits. So if each of you want to kind of expand on some of those other benefits of like what you're seeing for, for faculty and for students, if you want to kind of break that apart however you want to, but I feel like there are likely, I assume, very explicit and tangible benefits of doing, developing a textbook like this. So benefits for faculty and or students.
So I want to add something to this idea of human-centered, human-powered, which is that it's also expert-centered and expert-powered.
There you
right?
go.
This is what you were just bringing up. How do we make these textbooks that are super customized that actually no publisher would publish, because that's what humanities education is trying to tend to as many students individually as we can. Now, this is a case of a lower division, large lecture course. How do you tend to with a writing requirement. So how do you tend to the students, to their experience, to their needs, and to their also access points? And that is really a puzzle for any teacher in basically general education classes or these lower division classes that fulfill a requirement. And this particular class, not only is it a survey, a gen ed class, it is also a writing requirement class. Mm-hmm. And it's a large lecture class. So how do we make it possible for the professor to do a good job, and how do we make it possible for the students to actually benefit for what they need? And our students have incredibly diverse needs. So this a particular textbook and this particular experience has really been, what it has revealed to us is that what we think is highly revolutionary is really meeting the students already where they are, and also meeting the faculty's need to try and teach. At UCLA, our classes have grown exponentially. We take more and more of California students. This is the mission of the public university, but we cannot satisfy all those needs in a traditional classroom format. So when I was talking about it is human-powered, it is about human-to-human connection, and this is what this textbook and this classroom, AI assisted classroom has enabled, is that it opened up all this time. Because for the first time I have a textbook, it opened up all this time for me already to engage with the students, for me not to be just the lecturer. And then in turn, this opened up more time for teaching assistants and discussion sections to do their work. And Elizabeth can speak more to that.
So unlike the case of the history textbook that cost $150, the case for Professor Stahuyak was that there was no textbook. So she had previously taught using portions of different anthologies, but there was no existing textbook for her course. So after we created the textbook, I'll let her speak to the difference of her teaching experience.
Right. So first of all, I was the textbook, and I took up all the time doing the textbook, mm-hmm. Which meant I did not engage with the students. Now we had the textbook. The textbook is short. These chapters are extremely well conceived, so the students don't have to spend hours reading it. They can also listen to it on the podcast that we've created. They also have videos that accompany it, and they have the learning checkpoints that accompany it. And the learning checkpoints are conceptually construed. They're not after facts and dates. So after they do all of that, they're in the classroom, we can actually start doing the work of critical analysis, critical thinking, of really practicing, starting to practice the thinking that goes behind the writing. When they get to the TA sections, the TAs don't have to connect the primary sources to the context, because that's already done. I've already done it with the textbook and with my work in my lecture, where I engage with the students. They can then do focus on one primary source, do the critical analysis, and start the writing process. And what we saw over the course of the whole quarter, which is 10 weeks at UCLA, is that we have because it's a writing requirement course, we have 3 papers that are due in that class. For each paper, we have 3 weeks, and it's an incremental process in developing the writing skills. Each paper was focused on a different skill. Each was developed incrementally, and what was the incredible thing, other than the real feedback, the real-time feedback loop that we were able to create thanks to AI-assisted learning in the classroom, we also saw the students write, get feedback, work on their papers, and extremely important point to make, that enabled us to not have to surveil and penalize use of AI outside of the classroom, because they actually organically, this was organic kind of control of the writing process that we could see because it was getting done in live classrooms.
Yeah, I mean, that's just really great framing, I think, just because, like, the idea of, I think, as long as we're grounding, utilizing tools like this to, foster more human-to-human connections, that idea of, like, cool, like, I'm saving time, or, like, I'm doing things, quicker or whatever, but, like, it frees you up to, like, work more with your students, and that kind of stuff, and that's, we know, is, like, super high impact for students, to get that kind of, quality time with their professors, so that's really great. And then just, like, the nimbleness, the flexibility, the adaptability, like, all those are just, like, such great kind of power words that are swirling in my head with all this. So with all that being said, like, what is on the horizon for this? Like, how do you, maybe if there is any kind of bigger strokes of, like, how you're seeing this might expand or improve or change in the near future?
Just before I answer that, I wanted to loop back into your question about the student reception and experience. And I'm not sure if we mentioned, but the Kudu platform has a chatbot called Kai, available to the students 24/7. And so if and when they have questions about any topic in the chapters, they can ask Kai. And for many of for many students who are, for instance, afraid to ask the TA or ask the faculty in lecture, we found them really using the chatbot to help them figure out issues. To your question about the larger vision of this, I would like to see this in every large lecture class across the country. I've been at UCLA around 8 years and have worked through so many of these large lecture classes. I've never seen anything like what happened in Professor Sahyak's course. It was an hour twice a week of conversations, of thinking together, of unpacking images and primary sources. And everywhere around the class, people were talking, they were engaged. I really believe that this is the way to deliver fantastic education in a large lecture course.
And you can see that. We had 2 wonderful articles actually in the Daily Bruin, which is the daily newspaper, a student newspaper, and then also the Bruin Magazine, which is a quarterly magazine, also student run. We had 2 wonderful articles covering the class, and also asking students what they thought about the class and what was their experience with AI. And if anyone has any doubts about what AI can do for students, well, they should read those 2 articles, because it is just incredible to see the student response. And the sort of, one of the articles sort of shows actually the development, sort of the evolution of the student position. Oh, I'm very skeptical about this, but wait a minute, now after this experience, it is extraordinary what I've been able to achieve and how I can see the benefits of this for students. So that's really based on that kind of work. We're projecting, a number of classes that are, a number of professors that are going to work with Kudu on developing their coursework. What's on the horizon for me is developing, I have a grant that I run at UCLA that's based on, is an inquiry into historical indigenous knowledges compared to sort of European Western knowledges of the past. And we're working on developing this kind of a class that could be infinitely modulated, that speaks also to this idea that not only can we generate textbooks that we don't have, but we can also infinitely modulate these textbooks. So we're hoping to have this kind of comparative knowledge, Western knowledge with indigenous knowledge around historical concepts, around the evolution of these historical concepts that we can use, whether it's an internship that's 1 week long, that we can use in shorter classes, longer classes, that we can actually use in engaging with a lot of our community members who are doing kind of work with the city of LA. They can use it in their presentations. This is the power of AI, but it's giving, in this particular case, what AI can be accused of, still, if it's not human-centered and human-powered, is bias, right? Is the lack of information, the lack of inclusion of certain voices and perspectives. That's what we're trying to address with this next project.
I also just love too that like you all are like not like, you know, in fields that are like technically, you know, it's like this has applications across the board. So it's just really cool to see this. And, you know, because I think on that kind of beat, what advice would you give to other higher ed leaders right now? You know, they're hearing this. I'm hoping that they're, you know, sensing just the cool nature of something like this and the great impacts and benefits. So like advice for other higher ed leaders right now.
I think my advice would be to embrace AI. There's no getting around it. It's the future. Very much like the printing press was the future of its time. And I know that we've all been struck, at least since the launch of ChatGPT, with a deluge of AI-written student essays, and it's been a really difficult moment for all of us. But that doesn't mean that AI is bad. It's just AI, and I think it's up to us to figure out how to ethically engage with it for the future and the future of students and education.
Right. I just want to say, you know, it may not look like we're the best placed people to engage with AI or to know anything about what it's doing, but actually I am by training a medievalist. So as Elizabeth just mentioned, you know, I know exactly what it is to go from manuscripts and individuated copies to something that would be mass disseminated, such as a book. So I would say we are the best placed people to know exactly what kind of revolution we're facing and to embrace it for these reasons, as she was just saying, that are what is ethical and responsible AI. I would say ethical and responsible AI, from our experience, is not a place where we tell people this is what you should do and this is how you should do it. We have been engaged in the process of explaining why we're doing how we're doing it. And that has really had this positive impact in, for example, these articles that I was mentioning on campus, because the students can see how it works. They see how it benefits them. They see that they've already embraced it anyway. But if we teach them how to use it to basically better their skills rather than to replace their skills, then we're really creating the citizens for the future. This is the whole conversation around AI literacy, right? And the final point I want to make about that question of responsible AI, and this is the message to higher ed leaders, is that we need to be, what we've learned at this show is that there are incredible products out there, but these products are not necessarily for higher ed. So the Kudu platform and the work we're doing with Kudu is really about, from the ground up, creating the tools, creating the kinds of materials that we need, and we need to embrace it because we need to drive that conversation for ourselves. And if we don't, we're going to have different kinds of products be imposed on us that are going to be generic, that are going to have the bias, that are not going to be perfectly suited, and that will increase this gap between what AI can do and what it's actually doing. So we need to be filling in that gap by embracing AI and driving the conversation. And so thank you for having us help in that conversation.
Yeah, it's a great call to action. And also, as a history major back in undergrad, I appreciate the callbacks to various, kind of turning points in time, but and just appreciate both of your passion, your willingness to kind of have these conversations, be at events like this and everything. It's really insightful and hopefully very motivational and inspirational to others listening. So ways to connect with both of you and the work you're doing and the show notes. So just thank you so much for hanging out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dustin.
Welcome to the Higher Ed Geek Podcast. Each week, we explore the impact of EdTech on the student experience with engaging, fun, and relevant conversations that honor the wide range of work happening all across the higher ed ecosystem. I'm your host, Dustin Ramsdell. I've been working in and around higher ed for the past decade, focused on student support and digital experiences. Join me every week for discussions with some of the best minds in education technology. The Higher Education Podcast is a part of the Enrollify Podcast Network, a robust collection of shows designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.